He said they created more jobs in their first term than any first term government since 1992.
Sana, I don't know whether to laugh or smile. The man says they've created more jobs. I think the first question that should be asked is, why does he need to tell? I think I hear a little bit of an echo.
Okay. I can hear you clearly. Everything is clear. So please go ahead.
All right, good. The question is, why does he have to come out and tell Ghanaians that he has created jobs? If indeed those jobs are there, you see Ghanaians celebrating the government because the jobs are there. I'll give you a typical example. When there was Doomsaw, you saw Ghanaians coming out and making a lot of, I wouldn't say noise, but complaining about Doomsaw. As soon as Muhammad solved Doomsaw, we didn't hear all those noises anymore. So if now people are complaining that there are no jobs, and his response is, we have created the most jobs of any government in their first term. You see, Bawumia likes to play with words. What is the meaning of the most jobs of any government in their first term? It doesn't make sense. Tell us how many jobs you have created, and then we can get through it. So if all other governments created 0 jobs, and you have created 1 job, and people are complaining there are no jobs, your response to them is, the others created 0, I created 1, so shut up. What Bawumia is saying doesn't make sense, and he knows it. The reason he cannot put numbers, he only says he's a data man, doesn't he? When you talk, he said the data is there. He should tell us exactly how many jobs they created, in which sectors. The last time he tried, he had egg in face. He was the one who went about saying that they had created 2 million jobs. Meanwhile, the finance minister last year in the 2020 budget said they had created 3.5 million jobs. And Bawumia, as usual, went around with Nanadu making noise that they had created 2 million jobs, of which 778,000 were public sector jobs. Only for the finance minister last month to come and tell us that the public sector is choked because it has got 650,000 jobs. So if you, Bawumia, say you have created 770,000 jobs in the public sector, how come the total number of jobs in the public sector is 650,000, as the finance minister says? And we know that in 2017, when the government of the NDC handed over, there were over 520,000 jobs in the public sector. So if you strike a difference, you have effectively only created 130,000 jobs. So where is the plenty jobs that they are talking about? So I honestly don't understand him, because you see that the problem with the man is he's probably fallen for his own lies. And that is why these days he will touch briefly on it and divert straight into IT and digitization, because he has lost the plot. The truth of the matter, Senna, is if you look at the employment statistics, the numbers this government claims to have, the jobs this government claims to have created, are literally non-existent. They keep counting the largest number of new factories created. Where are those jobs for those new factories? If you go to the Aqua farms and give them money to continue operating, they were already employing people. You give them money and you say you have created jobs. You go to B5 Plus, that steel company that provided steel for the building of Tetekwashi and the Kufuor. You go and give them money and add their name to one district, one factory, and count their current total number of staff as new jobs. Meanwhile, those guys were already working there before you even took over. All you have done is giving them free money, and you count those jobs. When you keep doing this, why won't you go around saying that you have created jobs and the people tell you there are no jobs? Because you haven't created new jobs. You have simply been giving free money to existing businesses. And they've done it across the length and breadth of this country, Senna. So the people's complaint that there are no jobs is the truth. The people know what they are in. They are sitting in the shoes. The shoes are tight. You are sitting there saying to them that the shoes I give you are not tight. What is on the ground, Senna, is not what this man is talking about. He's completely removed from the ground. He is not in touch at all.
The second one he says they did is they reduced inflation from 15% to near single digits.
Again, here you see the man loves to play with words. Near single digit. Did you get single digit? It's either you didn't get single digit or you got single digit. You took it, okay, fine. It was Doomsaw economy, 15%. You took it, it's sitting around 11%. And even with that, we all know the reasons why it is where it is. Look, the reality of the case is, if I tell you, Senna, that my wife is nearly pregnant, that doesn't make her pregnant. So this is simple logic. This is Bawumia as usual, playing with words. You know, like the jester. He is always lying. He knows that when he says near single digit, his communicators will run with it and remove the near and say single digit, because most of them don't even read what they are supposed to be reading. They don't. He just lies and they will carry it into the airwaves. You took it from double digit, which is 15%. 5 years later, it is still double digit at 10%, 11%. So why will you say I took it from single digit, from double digit 50% to near? Just tell us if you had achieved single digit. China, it is on record. If it is the case of boasting about single digit inflation, there is only one party in the history of Ghana. If I ignore the Nkrumah days, there's only one party that has been able to achieve single digit and keep inflation as single digit for an uninterrupted period of 33 consecutive months. Ghana, 33 consecutive months, and that is the NDC. The NDC did it between 2011 and 2013, maintained single-digit inflation uninterrupted. When these guys came, you know what they did, Sana? They struggled to put single-digit down. So they went and rebased it in, I think, somewhere around August 2019 or 18. And by rebasing, it means they were able to move inflation quickly from double-digit into single-digit. Even with that, Sana, barely 8-9 months later, it went back to double digit, and they have never been able to get it down. So when he's at boasting about single digit inflation, the NDC did better than you. You could never match the NDC's 33-month single digit. So is that an achievement? It doesn't make sense. The guy, one should have told us that the NDC did 33 months of single digit. We did 35. Tell us that. Don't tell us we nearly achieved single digit. You are about, see, it's like you have two wives, and then the one wife that has not yet got pregnant is celebrating because she nearly got pregnant, and the other one who has given birth is just looking at them. If it's single digit inflation, we gave birth to it, and we kept it for 33 uninterrupted months. You are suffering, you can't get to single digit. Nearly does not kill a bird, Senna, as they say. So again, it is just hot air and open lies.
And then there's the achieving the lowest exchange rate depreciation for any first-term government since 1992.
So like I say, this man, if you notice what he said, he says the lowest rate of depreciation. Now, for me, the matter is simple. The way Bawumia will calculate is, if we do a quick analysis, Sana, when they took the city, yeah, it was barely 1 to 4. Now it is 1 to 6.3. So if we strike the difference of what they took in January, let's even say in January, some say it was as high as 4.2 in January 2017. So let's say they took 4.2 at the time, right? Then now it is about 6.3. If you subtract 6.3 from 4.2, you get about 2.1. If you take 2.1 and strike it as a percentage of the 4.2 that they inherited, have they no more than doubled it? Well, have they no more increases by more than 50%? So what is that mathematics of rate? In any case, the point of the fact of the matter is this. The NDC inherited the CD from Kufuor at about 1.2. When we were leaving office, 8 years later, Senna, 8 years later, when we were leaving office, it was at 4.2. So for 8 years, the NDC did a cumulative, the CD depreciated by 3 currency points, if you want to call it that way. Then we gave it to them at 4.2. They are in year 4. They haven't even finished year 5. 4 months, 4 years, 10 months. And they have already increased the CD by 2.1. Senna, if you do a quick extrapolation, if they have hit 2.1 in just 4 years, what will they hit in 8 years? It means that in 8 years, they would have doubled it to about 4. So if you are talking about who is better, the NDC took it from 1.2 from before, handed it over to 4.2 to you. 3 basis points it increased in 8 years. You took it from 4.2. You are currently at 6.2 after 4 years. So you've already gone 2.1 within 4 years. Double that 2.1. It means they will be at 4.2, which means they would have done worse than the NDC. The city would have depreciated, if you do a projection, roughly a rough projection, the city would have depreciated under their stewardship by at least 4.2 currency points. And we haven't even started factoring all the mess that is currently happening in Senna. The city is under pressure. The city is under siege because of their reckless borrowing and mismanagement of the economy. And this man then comes to tell you, somebody took 8 years to get 3. I took 4 years to get 2. It doesn't take anybody to realize, if 8 years was 3, then your 4 years should have been 1.5. So if after 4 years, instead of 1.5 currency movement, you are at 2.1, that means you're already worse than the person. So what is your argument about rate of inflation? Rate of currency depreciation? You know what he tends to do? You know, if in fractions, if the base is lower, then your fraction could be higher. But if the base is higher, then your fraction might be lower in percentage terms. So he tends to rely on that. And he will strike an average and strike an average of that average. But Senna, take a simple step back. Let's not complicate it. NDC took it at 1.2, handed it over to you at 4.2. Yes, we agree. We moved the CD by 3 currency points. It's part of doing so. It's part of all the challenges and with all the massive work we did. You took it from 4.2 halfway through the race. 4 years later, you are already gone to what? 6.3, which means you have already depreciated the CD by 2 currency points in 4 years. If we go with that track record and assume that you don't even do worse, you will end your 8 years at 4. So if you look at it in any way you look at it from a simplistic perspective, the man is being dishonest. And that's why he is simply saying the rate of depreciation. We don't care about the rate of depreciation. When I go to the forex grid, I'm not going there to buy the CD at a rate of depreciation. I'm going to buy there at the value of the CD to the dollar. If you take the value of the CD to the dollar in currency points, you will find that the NDC are done much better than what he's done. And all he's trying to do, he knows if he goes down the straight line, he will be beaten. He will be beaten flat. So what is he doing? He is playing Chaskele behind the corner and talking about rate of inflation, rate of depreciation. We don't buy CD at rate of depreciation. We buy CD at the currency value of the market center.
And the other one I also wanted to draw attention to is where he says recorded positive trade balances in 4 successive years, best in more than a decade.
You see, Sana, these are some of the things. You know, when COVID started, and I'll just use this to give people an example. If you remember, when COVID started, the dollar was under pressure because COVID started in China. And when it started in China, China locked down. And because China locked down, remember we import a lot from China. And your trade balance is a function of how much you import versus how much you export. So if we are exporting 100 million, but importing 200 million, then we have a net trade deficit of 100 because we are importing more than we're exporting, correct? When COVID started and China shut down, it means we were literally importing 0 from China. But we continue to export to the rest of the world. So they started making noise. Yes, our trade surplus is up. Our trade surplus is up. That was the COVID period. What happened? When it didn't take long for us to realize that was a big joke. Because as soon as China opens back, the flood comes back, we are back to square one. Now, let's go back to the story of 2017, 2018, 2019. China, our oil exports jumped up by 69%, almost 70%. And oil was the largest export commodity we have now. Why did it do that? Because the President Mahama commissioned 2 new oil wells that increased our oil production capacity by 70%, our oil export capacity by 70%. So effectively, the amount of exports went up effectively by almost that much. It is that stabilized the difference between our imports and our exports, because our imports stayed the same. So if you assume that our imports used to be 100 before Mahama released the oil wells, which came on stream in 2017, this government did nothing. If you assume that our exports was 100 and our imports was say 120, as soon as Mahama increased our exports by 70% to 170, you now see that our imports remained at 140 or 120 and our exports went to 170. The difference of 50 is a positive in our favor. Now, who is responsible for those two new oil wells that increased our oil export by that much? Is it Bawumia? Is it Nanado? So if you look at it from that angle, he comes out and makes a lot of noise. What he should have said is, we did A, B, and C that led to this happening. Don't just come and start throwing numbers around, hoping that nobody knows the views behind the numbers. If you take 2017 budget or 2018 budget and you compare and you look at the lines on around the oil revenues and exports, it will tell you why we registered surpluses. It was purely, how many factories are they built in 2017? They hadn't even read their budget yet when the oil was going out. They hadn't done anything like that. So at the end of the day, if you look at what was responsible for the surplus, the trade surplus that he's making noise about, it is the NDC's work. Because they've done nothing. They haven't released any oil well. They were busy selling concessions, oil concessions among themselves. They haven't brought in any new factory. Nothing that generates any revenue or any exports. All these local eco-juice and coal that they are making noise, how much has eco-juice contributed to the trade surplus? Let them tell us how much their factories have contributed to export that has made the difference in the trade surplus. But you just come and say we have had the most amount of trade surplus in any other government without telling what the other governments do. It's a palpable lie, Senna.
Like I said, I'm going one after the other. There's this one where he says we have the lowest average bank lending rate since 1992.
Again, Sana, your listeners will know the truth. You see, this is the thing. This Bawumia and his Dukesh, they continue mistaking themselves. They continue confusing themselves with their own propaganda. The fact that the government reduces its prime rate to 15% doesn't mean that the banks will lend to you at 15%. Can Bawumia tell us any bank, including consolidated bank they set up, including the government banks like ADB, the banks like NIB, tell us which of them is lending at 15%. They should tell us which of them is lending at 50%. So when you overnight reduce the prime rate, the Bank of Ghana reduces its prime rate, and you start making noise that we have the lowest. Go to the market and see. People are going to the market for loans, and they are getting it at 35% plus. In fact, the number of financial institutions, the deepening of the financial sector that used to exist under President Mahama was completely destroyed by their banking sector reforms. They shut down Indom's Bank. They shut down a lot of banks that were lending at competitive rates. What they are now doing is tokenism. Now, if it is true, Senna, this is a simple question. If they have achieved the lowest interest rate or bank lending rate, why is it that all the one district, one factory companies that they are sponsoring are not going to those banks for those low interest? Why are they all coming to government exempt bank for free money? Like Eco Juice, like a complete juice factory. They needed $15 million to set up. They could only raise $5 million from their own coffers. Government gave them $10 million from Exim Bank, Mahama's Exim Bank, the bank that Mahama set up for export imports, which these guys have been giving free money to, money to Chatawale and Ejako from. If it is true that the banks were that competitive and interest rates were that low, why is it that all those one district, one factory businesses that they are giving them free money and writing on there, why are they not going to the banks to lend free rather than going to take government money? That in itself tells you when government has to intervene with its own money to give to businesses, it tells you that the lending sector is not vibrant enough. And any business man out there will tell you that is the truth. There were several loan savings and loans companies, finance houses, several banks that were lending, which were all shut up. They'll be shut down. Having shut them down, only a few are there. And those ones, the rates they advertise you. When you walk in, you know how far. That is the truth. They will advertise a particular rate. If you want, let Bawumia show us any of those businesses making noise which have gone there and taken a loan at an interest less than 30%. It's one thing to announce a prime rate and then say, oh, all the banks will follow. The banks are not enjoying to follow because they add their risk rate. And we all know that the current economic risk is very high. The current risk of default is high. Because when you tax people, when you tax businesses, and the economy is not doing well, which means people are not buying, then those businesses, their profits is going to be low, which means the ability to raise enough money to pay back the interest is relatively low, and therefore there are higher credit risk. The banks will factor that into their rate. See, you start with your base rate, you add your risk rate, and you add the individual businesses' unique risk rate as well. When you add all those, you'll find that no bank is lending at the rates that he's making noise about. Again, here, the man is always coy. He should have told us the exact number, so that we'll go out and do a saving to the business and say which of them have been able to borrow at that rate. So you see, the man is always playing Chaskele with the truth. You know, all the time he's playing hide and seek. He will never tell you the truth, and he's very coy. He won't give you the data. He should have told us the exact number, so that we can query him on Senna.
Well, I'd like to jump to the last one, maybe the last but two. But the last one is stimulating industrialization from the ground up through one district, one factory. More factories have been set up than under any other government in the history of Ghana.
Senna, when a factory is set up, it will produce, right? And when that factory produces, it needs people to work there, and jobs will be created. So looking at it from the jobs perspective, if all those factories have been created, and this man thinks that he has even created more factories than Nkrumah, everybody knows that is a joke. But let us grant him that. If that is the case, where are the jobs? And why are Ghanaians complaining? Where are the jobs? Now, the other element of production is when the factories produce, it increases the production capacity in the economy. Production leads to consumption because when you produce, people will consume. So it's one of two things. When you produce and more factories, your economy will grow because the total capacity of goods and services in the economy would have increased. Alright? And if those have increased, it will lead to exports. And when you export, you get more revenue. So why, if that is the case, why is it that government revenue hasn't gone up and has consistently come down? Why is it that revenue in the first 7 months alone of this year did not meet its target? We missed the target by 12%, over 4 billion cedis. So if all these factories are suddenly producing, because they have to pay people, they will have to sell, and we will tax based on what they sell, and we'll make more money. In fact, you increase tax rates at recently. So if the factories are producing a lot, and you are taxing them, you should make more money. Simple example, assume that before all those plenty factories, the total production capacity was 100 million in the economy, and you were taxing them at 20%. It means our tax would have been 20 million. If you now increase by factories production to 200 million, and you still stay at the 20%, you should now get 40 million. Here is the case. Your factories are there. You claim your production has increased. You have even increased taxes in the last budget, and your revenue has come down. Now, this is the interesting thing, Senna. Interestingly, in spite of all the factories, they set up the largest number of factories. What was the performance of industry last year? The factories all come under industry. Industry collapsed by 15.6%. Senna, how is it that under President Mahama, with Dumso, with all the challenges, we never recorded a negative growth in industry? Suddenly, under this government that has set up the largest number of factories, we recorded negative 15% decline in industry. So you are setting up the factories are producing, and yet your overall production capacity has collapsed. Does it mean you collapse more factories than you built? It just doesn't make sense. When there is nothing, let's assume they inherited nothing. It was zero. Suddenly, you have added 100 factories, and it is now negative 15%. And this is the interesting thing, Senna. Any economy supports private businesses to set up factories. Because when you set up factories, it increases your production capacity, which means you will buy more imports from farmers and give them money, which means you will produce and pay your workers and give them income to spend, which means you will sell into the economy, make profit, and generate more money, which means that the overall economy will grow. The more factories you have, the more growth in the economy there will be. If you look at 2011, we recorded over 14.6% growth in GDP. It was because we supported factories. If you remember at the time, we supported a lot of pharmaceutical companies to expand production and even go into Liberia and other neighboring countries. It was also because we supported the on-streaming of oil and so many stuff. We supported allied businesses that were working to supply the oil sector. So you could see the fruit. The economy jumped up by over 14.6%, the highest in the world at the time. Now, Senna, this is the case where Bawumia tells us that they've had the largest number of factories since independence. They've had the largest number of factories. And yet the economy actually contracted for the first time in 37 years. Since the 80s when there was hunger, for the first time in 37 years, last year, the economy contracted in Q2 by negative 3.2%. So the economy did not increase. It reduced by 3.2%. Senna, how do you add more production capacity? How do you increase the number of factories? How do you increase consumption? How do you increase revenue by putting in new factories, and yet your GDP collapses? And we ended the year in 0.4%. In fact, we were very, very close to zero. Why? How does that make sense that you have added more factories than before? Look at the Dumbah economy that you always make noise of. The Dumbah economy gave us GDP growth of 3.4%. An economy that didn't have the factories that you claim you have. An economy that was Dumbah huddled. We still got 3.4%. You came and added all those factories. You claim to be superior wage scale and you ended it in 0.4%. So where is the truth? Where are those factories? Is it the same factories like the One Village, One Dam that they went on constructed football pitches? So let's look at the facts on the ground. Let's look at the foods. There's no point in telling me that you are cooking in the kitchen when 3 hours later I come to the kitchen, there's no food to eat. What were you cooking then, Senna? So again, Bawumia was not being honest.
Well, the part that I said I was going to raise with you, also that one I think is a local issue anyway. Yeah. But I think where he is talking about safeguarding food security and fight against hunger through planting for food and jobs. In fact, if we go up a bit more, if we go up, the introduction to the second paragraph says, one of the things says, pandemic on the global COVID-19 notwithstanding the devastating impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the global economic, with increases in prices globally. And then he comes back to talk about the planting for food and jobs and how they've been able to deal with hunger, like I read to you. That's safeguarding food security and fight against hunger through planting for food and jobs. I guess he's saying that the increases in the prices of food there is globally, but we've done what is necessary to ensure that we safeguard food security and fight hunger.
Sana, anybody who likes kinky, check the price of kinky. It is a function of the fact that our bread basket in Techiman, in the Brong Hafo area, that bread basket could not produce enough food for us, and we're importing maize from Cote d'Ivoire. How do you have planting for food and jobs, and you put in all the so-called fertilizers only to realize that we are producing less than we produced before planting for food and jobs? Didn't we hear the agric minister go on publicly and lie about the price of a finger of plantain only to be caught out by the same market traders? Are we not aware that we still import tomatoes from the deserted country called Burkina Faso? Onions, tomatoes, we import it from there. Is he not aware that when he was challenged, when the agric minister was challenged on the efficacy of the planting for food and jobs, his only response was that the fertilizers that they were supposed to use for planting for food and jobs were carried across the border by donkeys to Burkina Faso? So if he's aware of that, what is he making noise about? The price of maize, check the price of maize in 2017, 2016, and check it now. Anybody who buys maize, you will tell it's more than doubled. So what is the food security he's talking about? Is he not aware that even the national whatever buffer stock company, we had to borrow grains from ECOWAS to feed our secondary schools barely a year and a half ago? Where is that food security? Or our food security is now with ECOWAS. Countries like Mali, war-torn countries, Mali with rebels in it, Burkina with rebels warring them, they were still able to provide food and lend grains to us for the first time in the history of our country. We went to our neighboring countries and begged them to give us grains like maize, millet, so that we can go and feed our students. And you are telling us about food security. It should have been the other way around. If we had food security, prices of food should have come down. And we should have actually been exporting food to the neighboring countries, not importing maize from Cote d'Ivoire, importing tomatoes from Burkina Faso, even tomatoes from Morocco and Egypt. We import them to Ghana today. Desert countries, we import them to Ghana. And you are making noise about planting for food and country and jobs. These people, they are just PowerPoint economists. They have no clue. They just go and do PowerPoint, convince themselves and come and tell us about it and think that we will believe them. Let us see what is on the ground. Take any commodity that was high price in 2016 and now low price now, then we can say you have done well. We will clap for you. Everything else is just hot air, Senna.